Now I want you guys to watch this opening gameplay. That is 2 unstoppable champions with a group of enemies, and we wipe them all out with ease. I never thought this day would come for these roaming supers to be this good, and I'm actually really excited to show you guys why I think you need to try builds that play into the supers that got buffed yesterday. Dare I say there could be a new meta upon us within these Grandmasters. Or at least we have a ton of options now, which is what we always want when it comes to builds. Now I have used Song of Flame on the Prismatic Warlock in difficult content like Grandmasters since it was released in final shape, because it's that good, right? We all know this. But with the changes to roaming supers, I urge you guys to give them a try because look what we are doing to multiple champions along with groups of enemies. And this is all done solo as well in a Grandmaster, so if you had 2 teammates, it would make things that much better, right? I can literally use my super to kill champions and everything around it, finish off the mini boss, and walk away with my super again. Since we can chain these supers so easily and quickly now, it allows us to just pop 2 of them in the first plate room to capture that plate with ease and move on. Or in the long corridors, I can pop my super, speed through all the screebs that are normally really annoying, and those void scorn snipers. Then I get to the end, kill the overload champion, and I have my super back, which is just pretty crazy. Now there are a few things that you need to understand with Storm Trance that makes it way better than people think, and boosts the overall damage, and allows you to deal with champions pretty easily when you play it correctly, and understand your ability rotations and how you can use them while you're in your super. So in case you guys didn't know, when you pop Storm Trance, it creates a jolting shockwave underneath you. This applies the jolt debuff. So at its base, it can stun overload champions for you, as long as you hit them with that shockwave underneath you, which is pretty easy to do. Now when you hold Storm Trance down on an enemy, it'll gradually ramp up in damage and deal more damage, so that's all pretty straightforward, right? But now we're going to add in a couple other things. First off is Phoenix Dive. Before you pop your Storm Trance, Phoenix Dive to the ground. This is going to take advantage of that Hellion aspect and put that Solar Mortar on you while you're roaming around in your super. This means that this Solar Mortar can stun unstoppable champions for you while you're in your super. That's how you see me deal with unstoppable champions multiple times. And it's just added overall damage and ignitions going off while you're in Storm Trance. Second is your Arcane Needle. I was still getting used to this, but technically you should throw that Arcane Needle out at a champion, doesn't matter what champion it hits, and this will apply the Unravel debuff to that champion. Then you pop Phoenix Dive, put that Solar Mortar on you, and then you pop that Storm Trance. Then when you hit enemies with that Storm Trance, that Unravel debuff is then spreading throughout the entire room, including the different champions or mini bosses that might be in there. And that's important because of Facet of Courage. Your Arc, Solar, and Void abilities deal increased damage to targets afflicted with darkness debuffs. Since everything is unraveled, your super is now hitting 10% harder, and your Hellion is hitting 10% harder. Next is your Storm Grenade. This is the grenade we choose to use with this build, and we pair that with Facet of Dominance as a fragment. Your Void Grenades weaken targets, and your Arc Grenades jolt targets. This allows our Storm Grenade to jolt enemies, and if you guys didn't know this, you can use your grenades while in Storm Trance. So now you have the initial jolting effects of Storm Trance when you cast it to the ground, but let's say you're halfway through your super or so, and there's an Overload champion, just then throw your Storm Grenade out, that'll apply the jolt buff to that Overload champion, stun it, and you can go back to using your super. So it's just another source of damage, and the added jolt debuff to help stun overloads even more. And then on top of that, since we have Prismatic now, we add in our Transcendence. You can pop Transcendence before going into Storm Trance. If you do this, you can use the Freezing Singularity Grenade while in Storm Trance, which is pretty freaking sweet. So when you throw that grenade out in Storm Trance, it's going to deploy that slow field, it's going to weaken enemies thanks to the Facet of Dominance, right? Because your Void Grenades will weaken targets, and it'll eventually freeze and shatter enemies. So one Freezing Singularity, when you throw it out, will stun Overload champions and stun unstoppable champions because of the slow and the shatter effect. Plus it weakens them for 15% debuff, right? So now your Storm Trance is hitting 15% harder when this grenade is on them. It's hitting 10% harder with Facet of Courage, and that's not including the jolt damage, the unravel damage, the Hellion damage, all of it combining in one to let you do this. But where the build takes it even further after that is the ability to walk away from fights with your Transcendence and your super back fully charged to be able to just do it in the next room. It's pretty crazy when you start adding these things up. So for your exotic weapon, I would suggest taking a strong kinetic weapon. Whether that be Bad Juju to stun unstoppables or get extra super regeneration coming back from String of Curses, curses, right? You could use Wish Ender because it hits like a truck. It's going to charge your super very quickly. Malfeasance is another good one. There are so many options when it comes to this, but the reason I like Kinetic here with Prismatic is because of Facet of Grace, where you defeat targets with kinetic weapons grants you bonus Transcendence energy, and then defeating targets with your supers, your roaming supers that hit harder and you have them up all the time, grants you and nearby allies bonus Transcendence energy as well. So those play together to make you have that Transcendence up all the time. Now just in case you didn't know, your second aspect would be Feed the Void, defeating targets with abilities grant Devour. Well, that also counts with Storm Trance, it counts with the Thunderish Crash that you let go when you cast it, or your Lightning that kills anything, you're proccing Devour while in your super, that's regenning your grenade, and just keeping you topped off in health. Oh, and if you guys didn't know, most roaming supers in the game have like a 90% damage reduction. I believe the only one that doesn't is maybe Golden Gun if I remember correctly. I think that was at like 60 or 70%, but you literally cannot die in roaming supers. Now the last fragment I would put on is Facet of Dawn. Powered melee hits against targets makes you radiant. Since we're gonna have Arcane Needle up all the time while in Transcendence, why not add a 25% damage buff to your weapon? And the reason we do this is because the harder you hit with your weapon, the more super energy you have coming back to you. Now for the exotic we're choosing and the gameplay you're watching, that is Storm Dancer's Brace. Each target you defeat with Storm Trance increases the damage you deal with it and refunds super energy when Storm Trance ends. Basically every enemy you kill increases your damage by 10%, and this can stack up to 10 times. So it increases Storm Trance damage by 100% if you're killing enough enemies with it. But even if you only kill 1 or 2 red bars, you're just making your super hit 10, 20, 30% harder, which is really good when you combine all the stuff that I've already went over, right? But then it also refunds up to 50% of your super energy based on the number of enemies killed with your super. So it's ramping up damage for us, and it's giving us more super energy back. So in these fights, you see me come out with half my super, and then all I need to do is get the other half back, which I get instantly because of the 3x damage multiplier we get now with these roaming supers that give us that super back based on our damage dealt. So Storm Dancer's Brace is a huge pick here. I also might do another build with Crown of Tempest, because I did that back when Final Shape dropped, and I still really like that helmet on Prismatic. So if you guys want to see me cover that one, just let me know down in the comments. Now let's go over the mods really quickly. This is about Orbs of Power, Super Gain, and damage that we want to output, right? All to play back into super. So for the helmet, I took a Kinetic Siphon to create Orbs of Power with that exotic weapon, and a Harmonic Siphon so my arc weapon create Orbs of Power. More Orbs of Power means more super energy coming back to you. We'll take an Ashes to Assets on our helmet, more super energy when we get kills with our Storm Grenade or our Freezing Singularity Grenade. On our gauntlets, we'll take Firepower, create Orbs of Power with those grenade kills. We'll take a Bolstering Detonation, grants class ability energy when you cause damage with grenades. Since we're doing that often, I do want to keep Phoenix Dive up because I want to have access to that Hellion Mortar all the time. And then I took a Kinetic Loader here. This slot is open for whatever you guys want. On the chest piece, take your damage resistance mods, match whatever activity you're doing. I believe this Birthplace has a Void Burn, so you definitely want to take a Void damage resistance. On the boots, I take 3 Kinetic Weapon Surges. This allows that bad juju to hit 22% harder pretty much all the time. Now when you combine that with Radiant hitting 25% harder, right, and then the string of curses that ramps up your damage on bad juju, you have 3 different increases of damage from the exotic weapon, the kinetic weapon surges that we're using, and the Radiant buff that it allows bad juju to hit very hard, and when the chaining starts happening on red bars, that's how you're gonna get your super in like 10 kills, because you're getting half that super back already from Storm Dancer's Brace. On the class item, we'll take Time Dilation. It just lets those kinetic surges last 15 seconds per orb of power we pick up. So when you pick up 3 orbs of power, you have that damage buff for 45 seconds. Pretty easy to keep up. I also like a Reaper mod here, so after we use that Phoenix Dive, we'll create another orb of power when we kill something with our weapon. For stats on the build, 100 Resilience is the only one you need to hit. That is damage reduction in all activities, 30% by the way, and then push your Discipline up to 100 and your Recovery up to 100 if you can, both to feed that grenade ability and the class ability. I'd actually push the Recovery up before the Discipline, since your grenade comes back from Devour so fast anyways, and you might as well get that Phoenix Dive and that Hellion Mortar up more often. I plan to do some more super builds over the next week and test each of them out. I think there's a lot of combinations you can do with these, and it just makes me feel powerful as a Guardian, and that's what I always want in Destiny. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys all in the next video. Have a great rest of your day.